He accidentally entered his maid's room. What he witnessed softened his heart. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The mansion was silent at midnight, the kind of quiet that felt almost too heavy for a house that large. Adrian Cole, the 36-year-old billionaire known for his unshakable discipline, walked down the dim hallway with a stack of documents in his hand. He had planned to review them in his study, but a faint flicker of light at the end of the corridor caught his eye. It was coming from the servants' wing. Adrian paused. Every light in this part of the house should have been off. The staff had strict schedules, and his household ran with the precision of a well-engineered machine. But tonight, something was off. The door to one of the small rooms was slightly open, a sliver of warm light spilling onto the floorboards. He stepped closer, brows tightening. It was Lina's room. She was the quiet one, the youngest maid, the one who always kept her head down and apologized, even when she had done nothing wrong. The one he barely noticed beyond a polite nod at breakfast. He pushed the door gently. "Lina?" he called softly. No answer. The moment the door swung open wider, a wave of sharp chemical smell hit him. His breath caught. The small room was hazy with fumes from a tipped-over bottle of cleaning solvent. And on the thin carpet, curled near the foot of the bed, was Lina. Her breathing was shallow. One arm was tucked under her, the other clutching a small cloth to her ribs. Her face was pale, her lips trembling with every weak inhale. Adrian's heart dropped. He moved fast, dropping the documents and kneeling beside her. "Lina, can you hear me?" His voice was firmer now, the voice of a man accustomed to taking control when chaos struck. Her eyelids fluttered but did not fully open. He slid one arm beneath her shoulders and another beneath her knees. She weighed almost nothing. As he lifted her, her head fell lightly against his chest, and he felt the faint, uneven rhythm of her breath. Something tightened inside him, a feeling he had not experienced in years. Concern, protectiveness, guilt for not noticing sooner. The corridor felt colder as he carried her out, away from the fumes, away from the suffocating little room that should have been a place of rest, but clearly had become anything but. "Stay with me, Lina," he murmured, striding toward the private medical room on the main floor. His voice lowered, almost to himself. "I should have seen this. I should have known." She did not answer, but her fingers twitched weakly against his shirt, as if reaching for something, or someone. And for reasons he could not explain, that small movement pierced straight through the armor he had spent a lifetime building. Something in Adrian Cole shifted that night, quietly, almost imperceptibly, yet enough to change the entire course of his heart. Lina did not wake until early morning. The soft hum of the medical equipment filled the quiet room, and the first rays of sunlight slipped through the tall windows. Adrian sat nearby in an armchair, still in the same shirt from the night before, his elbows on his knees and his eyes fixed on her breathing. He had not planned to stay, but every time he tried to leave, something inside him told him to sit back down. When she stirred, he straightened. "Lina? Can you hear me?" Her lashes fluttered, and her eyes opened slowly, confused and unfocused. She winced when she tried to sit up, her hand instinctively moving to her ribs. "You should not move too fast," Adrian said gently, crossing the room. "You inhaled too many chemical fumes. You collapsed in your room last night." Her eyes widened with embarrassment and fear. She looked around the medical suite as if she had walked into the wrong world. "Sir, I am sorry. I did not mean to cause any trouble." His brows pulled together sharply. "You did not cause trouble. You were in danger." She lowered her gaze. "I should have worked faster." The manager said, "He said if I did not finish the deep cleaning alone, I would lose this month's pay." Adrian felt something cold rise in his chest. He had heard rumors of harsh discipline among the staff, but he had dismissed them as exaggerations. Lina's trembling voice made it feel painfully real. "What else did he say to you?" Adrian asked, calmer than he felt. Lina hesitated, her fingers tightening around the edge of the blanket. just that I should be grateful to have a job at all, and that if I complained, there would be consequences. Adrian exhaled slowly, fighting the urge to let his anger show. He did not want her to feel she was the cause of it. Lina, no one in this house should fear for their health or their dignity. You should have spoken to me. She shook her head quickly. You are the owner. You are very busy. I did not want you to think I was troublesome. A strange feeling passed through him, almost like guilt, but deeper. He leaned closer, keeping his voice steady. You are not troublesome. You are a person under my roof, and that means you deserve safety at the very least. Her lips parted slightly, as if those words were unfamiliar to her. Adrian reached to the side table and lifted a small cloth she had been clutching the night before. It was worn, embroidered with tiny initials. He held it out to her. This was in your hand when I found you. She pressed it to her chest with a quiet breath. It belonged to my mother. Her voice softened, and Adrian noticed how protective she was of the simple fabric. A small, ordinary piece of cloth, yet she held it as though it was the last piece of home she had left. He spoke more quietly. Lina, what happened last night should never happen again. I will personally look into every detail. Fear flickered across her face. Please do not make a scene. They will say I complained. No one dared to ask why. Adrian spent most of the daylight hours in meetings, but his mind kept drifting back to the moment she had awakened. The fear in her eyes. The way she apologized for nearly dying. The way she clutched that cloth from her mother as though it was the only anchor she had. By the third morning, he found himself walking toward the medical room again, long before breakfast. Lina sat upright on the bed, her hair tied back neatly, her hands folded in her lap. She looked healthier, but still fragile, like a candle that had survived a storm, but not yet regained its full flame. She immediately tried to stand when she saw him. Sir, I should return to work. I am feeling much better. I can resume my duties. You will not resume anything, Adrian said. Not until the doctor clears you. His tone was firm, but the concern beneath it softened the words. She sat back down slowly, her hands tightening again. I do not want to fall behind. It is already difficult to keep up. Adrian lowered himself into the chair beside her bed. Lina, I reviewed the work logs. You were doing the tasks of 3 people, alone. Her expression trembled but did not break. I was told that some positions were cut and that we all needed to double our effort. That is not true, Adrian said. No one approved any cuts. Her breath halted for a moment, and he saw the truth settle over her. The manager had been lying. To her, to the entire wing. He reached into the pocket of his suit and took out a small object. It was her notebook, the one he had found during the chaos of that night. He placed it gently on her lap. I believe this is yours. Lina stared at it, stunned. Her voice was barely a whisper. You found it. I read a few lines, Adrian admitted. You wrote down every act of kindness you performed, every thank you you received, every small moment you wanted to keep alive. Her cheeks warmed with embarrassment. It is silly. It helps me stay hopeful. It is not silly, he said quietly. It is extraordinary. The room fell into a soft silence. Outside the tall window, morning light spilled across the floor in gentle stripes. Adrian watched her trace the edges of the notebook, her fingertips moving as though she was touching memories rather than paper. Lina, he said finally, I need you to tell me the truth. Is this the first time you have fainted while working? She stared at her hands. No, but it was never this serious before. Adrian's jaw tightened. Did the manager know? He said it was my fault for not being strong enough. A controlled breath slipped out of him, not loud, but sharp enough to reveal the anger he was trying to contain. You should have come to me, he said. I would have listened. Her eyes lifted slowly. People like me do not usually get heard by people like you. For a moment, the world pulled still. Her words were not meant to wound, yet they cut deeper than anything he had heard in years. They reflected exactly what he had allowed this house to become, a place where fear spoke louder than fairness. Adrian rose from the chair, his voice steady but resolved. Lina, I cannot change what happened before, but I can promise you this, it will not continue. She looked uncertain, almost afraid to believe him. Sir, what are you planning to do? What I should have done a long time ago, he said. I am going to uncover the full truth. He paused, his gaze softening as it settled on her. "And I am going to make sure that no one in this house ever makes you feel small again." Lina pressed the notebook to her chest. She did not speak, but something in her expression changed, like a flower turning slightly toward light it was not sure it deserved. Adrian stepped toward the door. The investigation would begin now, and whatever he uncovered, he already knew one thing for certain. This was no longer only about household management. It was about a young woman who had nearly vanished in silence, and the man who could no longer ignore the sound of her suffering. The next morning, Adrian began his investigation with a level of focus that usually belonged to corporate crises. He reviewed security footage, staff logs, supply orders, and hallway camera feeds. The deeper he looked, the more troubling the pattern became. The manager had been manipulating overtime reports, deleting camera footage from the storage rooms, and assigning Lina tasks far beyond her physical capacity. By noon, Adrian requested a private meeting with the head of household operations. The woman entered his study with a stiff posture, already sensing something was wrong. "The workload distribution charts," Adrian said, sliding a folder across the desk. "Explain to me why one maid was assigned triple the duties," she faltered. "Sir, the manager said that she volunteered. He said she wanted the extra hours." "That is not true," Adrian replied. "And even if it was, no supervisor should allow that level of strain on a single employee." Her eyes lowered. "I did not know it was that extreme." "You should have known," he said, not harshly, but with a steadiness that carried weight. "It is your department." Her shoulders sank with guilt. After dismissing her, Adrian turned his attention to the person at the center of the issue. He requested that the manager report to his office immediately. When the manager finally entered, he looked confident, even smug, as if he had already built excuses in his mind. Adrian did not offer him a seat. "We need to talk about Lina," Adrian said. The manager's smile tightened. "Sir, she is a difficult case. Slow, forgetful, always needing correction. I have been very patient, but if she caused an incident..." "She collapsed," Adrian said flatly, "because she was forced to inhale chemical fumes in a room without proper ventilation. Alone. At night." The manager blinked, caught off guard. "Sir, that is not entirely accurate. She exaggerates. The girl is dramatic. She cannot handle real responsibility." Adrian stepped closer, his voice low and controlled. "I watched the footage. I saw the tasks you assigned. I saw how you removed other staff from shifts so she would be left alone." The man paled. "She needed discipline. She did not show proper respect. You cannot let the staff think they can slack off." Adrian's expression turned colder than the marble floor beneath them. "Respect is not earned by cruelty, and discipline is not the same as abuse." The manager swallowed hard. "Sir, if I may, maids like her, they come and go. They are replaceable. You should not trouble yourself with..." That sentence never finished. Adrian's voice cut through the room like a blade. "No person under my roof is replaceable." The silence that followed was deep and heavy. He continued, "You are hereby suspended from all duties pending a full investigation. Security will escort you from the property. Now." The color drained from the manager's face. "Sir, please, this is a misunderstanding. If you remove me, the staff will fall apart. They rely on me." "They will adapt," Adrian said, "but they will not adapt to cruelty." Two security officers arrived at the door. The manager looked around, desperate, but there was no ground left to stand on. As he was led away, he muttered under his breath, "All this, for a girl who barely speaks." Adrian heard it, and it only strengthened his resolve. When the door finally closed, he exhaled, a long breath he had not realized he had been holding. The truth was laid bare now. The corruption, the fear, the negligence he had allowed to grow because he believed the household would run itself. He thought of Lina lying on the floor, of how light she had felt in his arms, of the apology she whispered, as if she had been the burden. She was not the burden. The burden was the silence that had been allowed to spread. Later that day, Adrian walked back to the medical room. Lina was sitting by the window, wrapped in a blanket, reading her notebook. She looked up when she heard the door, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "Sir, is everything all right?" Adrian stepped inside. "Lina, I need to tell you something important." Her hands tightened slightly. Yes? He met her gaze directly, his voice steady. It was not your fault, and I promise you, the person responsible will never have power over you again. Her breath caught, not in fear this time, but in something closer to disbelief. For the first time since he had found her on the floor of that small, dim room, Lina allowed herself to hope that the nightmare might truly be ending. And Adrian realized that protecting her was no longer simply his duty. It had become something much more personal. The afternoon sun drifted gently across the medical room as Lina rested by the window, her blanket pulled close. She looked steadier now, but the quiet uncertainty in her eyes had not disappeared. When Adrian entered, she straightened instinctively, the familiar habit of a maid unsure of her place. "You should not stand," Adrian said. "You are still recovering." She eased back into her seat, her fingers tightening around the edges of her notebook. "I heard things happening in the hallway, staff talking. I hope I did not cause problems." "You did not," Adrian said. "You revealed them." She blinked, unsure how to respond. Adrian gestured toward the hall. "Word is spreading that the manager has been removed. Some staff are relieved, some are afraid. But the truth needed to come out." Lina looked down at her hands. "People will blame me." "They may," Adrian said honestly, "but you will not face any of them alone." Something in his voice made her look up, meeting his gaze with a mixture of gratitude and hesitation. "Sir, I never wanted anyone to get in trouble. I only wanted to do my job. And you did it," Adrian said, "with more integrity than anyone else in this house." A soft silence fell between them, not heavy like before, but warm, almost tentative. Adrian crossed the room and set a tray on the table beside her. Soup, bread, and tea. Simple, but prepared with care. "You need proper meals," he said. "The kitchen has been instructed to prepare food for you until you are fully recovered." Her eyes widened slightly. "This is too much. I'm just a maid." "You are not just anything," Adrian replied. "You are someone who deserves to be treated with dignity." Those words trembled through her like a quiet earthquake. She looked away, blinking back a rush of emotion she clearly did not want him to see. After a moment, she spoke softly. "Sir, may I ask why you were doing this? Most people in your position would have ignored what happened. They would have replaced me and moved on." Adrian hesitated, the truth forming slowly but clearly. "Because I did not see you before. Not really. And I should have." Her breath caught. He went on. "I walked this house every day believing it was under control, believing everyone was treated fairly. I was wrong. You suffered because of the blindness of a system I allowed to run without attention." She looked at him, her voice fragile. "I did not want to be a burden." "You never were," he said. "But your silence, your fear, that was the burden, and it was placed on you by others." Lina pressed her notebook to her chest again, as if grounding herself. "Thank you for defending me." Adrian nodded slowly. "Lina, I want you to understand something. What happened to you is not small. It was not an accident. It was a pattern, and every pattern has roots." She swallowed. "What do you mean?" "I have reasons to believe the manager was hiding more than mistreatment. Financial inconsistencies, supply discrepancies, possibly exploitation of multiple staff members." Her eyes widened. "I did not know. I never saw anything like that." "That is because you were targeted," Adrian said. "People who are frightened do not look up long enough to see the full picture." A soft tremble crossed her lips. "What will happen now?" Adrian stepped closer, his voice steady. "Now, I find every truth. I fix every part of this house that has been broken, and I begin with you." She stared at him, confused. "Begin with me?" He nodded. "Your job will not be the same when you return. You will not go back to the shadows. You will report directly to me." Her breath stilled. "Sir, I do not know if I am capable of that." "You are," Adrian said. "You have already shown more strength than you realize." A quiet knock came at the door. A staff member brought documents for Adrian, but he dismissed them quickly and returned his focus to her. "Lina, everything changes from here," he said gently. She held his gaze, her eyes glistening not from fear, but from something deeper. Trust beginning to take shape. For the first time since the night he carried her out of that small, suffocating room, Lina allowed herself to believe that her life inside this mansion might no longer be a place of silent suffering. And Adrian realized that protecting her was no longer simply an obligation. It had become a promise. Over the next several days, the mansion settled into a quieter rhythm. With the manager gone and the household staff reorganized, a sense of uneasy calm filled the halls. Yet beneath that calm, a deeper shift was taking place, one that only a few people sensed. Adrian felt it most of all. Each morning before he left for work, he found himself stopping by the medical room. Sometimes he brought tea, sometimes he brought updates. Sometimes he simply checked to see if Lina was well enough to stand on her own. She always tried to rise when he entered, and he always told her not to. On the fourth morning, she was strong enough to walk a short distance by herself. When he stepped into the room, she stood near the window, her hand resting lightly on the sill for balance. The light framed her gently, turning her quiet presence into something unexpectedly moving. "You are up early," Adrian said. She smiled faintly, a hint of pride in her expression. "I wanted to see if I could walk without feeling dizzy." "And can you?" "A little," she said. "The air feels clearer today." He nodded, relieved. "I am glad. You deserve clarity, especially here." Lina looked down at her hands. "It still feels strange. Being treated with kindness, being told that I matter. I'm not used to it." "You should be," Adrian said. "No one should grow accustomed to being mistreated." Her eyes softened, but she did not respond. Instead, she opened her notebook and held it out to him. "I wrote something. I wanted to thank you, but I did not know how to say it." He accepted the notebook, surprised. On the first page, she had written a single line. "Hope feels lighter when someone helps you carry it." Adrian closed the notebook slowly, his chest tightening with a feeling he could not yet name. "Lina, you do not need to thank me." "Yes, I do," she said quietly. "You changed everything." He took a slow breath. "Lina, what happened changed me as well." A soft tension filled the space between them, not rushed, not dramatic, but real. Before either of them could speak again, a staff member appeared at the door with a nervous expression. "Sir, there is something you need to see. It concerns the investigation." Adrian turned to Lina, his voice gentle. "I will return as soon as I can." She nodded. "Please be careful. People who do wrong rarely accept the truth easily." Her words echoed in his mind as he followed the staff member down the hallway. Something told him that the deeper he went into this investigation, the more he would uncover truths far more troubling than mistreated work logs and hidden overtime. And he already knew one truth clearly. Everything he was doing now was no longer about maintaining order. It was about protecting a woman whose quiet strength had begun to change the entire direction of his life. Adrian followed the staff member down the hallway and into his study, where a stack of newly uncovered records waited on his desk. The head of household operations stood beside them, her face tense. She gestured toward the papers. "Sir, these were found hidden in the back office. They appear to be altered files, supply orders, payroll adjustments, and disciplinary reports that were never submitted to you." Adrian lifted the top sheet. The handwriting was unmistakably the manager's. He had created false reports to justify shortages, unauthorized purchases, and strict punishments that he blamed on staff incompetence. But the most disturbing discovery was a pattern woven through the pages. Lina's name appeared repeatedly. It appeared on lists of underperformers, disciplinary risks, and watch for potential termination. Notes were written in the margins, describing her as expendable, easy to intimidate, and unlikely to report abuse. A cold wave moved through Adrian. "How long has this been happening?" he asked. "For at least 6 months," the woman replied. "Possibly longer." He was very careful to hide it. Adrian clenched his jaw. The truth hit harder than he expected. Lina had not been unlucky. She had been targeted, isolated, pressed into silence by a system she never had the power to fight. He dismissed the staff member gently and remained alone in the study for several minutes. His thoughts simmered, pressing heavily on his chest. He remembered Lina trembling in that small room, her breath shallow, clutching the cloth from her mother. He remembered her voice when she said people like her did not get heard by people like him. She had been right, until now. Adrian took the files and headed straight for the medical room. Lina looked up when he entered, her expression brightening for a brief second before fading when she saw his face. "Sir, what happened?" He placed the folder on the table beside her. "Lina, I need you to prepare yourself. I uncovered something important." She hesitated before reaching for the first page. Her hands trembled as she read the words written about her. She inhaled sharply, pulling back as though the paper had burned her. "I did not know," she whispered. "I thought I was simply bad at my job. I thought I deserved the scolding." "You never deserved any of it," Adrian said. "He chose you because you were quiet, because you did not fight back, because you tried to endure." A tear slid down her cheek before she could stop it. She quickly wiped it away, embarrassed. "Why would he do this to me? I never harmed anyone." Adrian crouched beside her chair, lowering his voice. "People like him abuse power because they believe no one will challenge them, because they think people like you will remain invisible." "But you saw me," she whispered. "Yes," he said, "and I should have seen you sooner." Her breath trembled at his words, and he felt something stir inside him again, something he had not expected to feel so intensely. He straightened and spoke with clear resolve. "Lina, this ends today. There will be formal charges. He will answer for every lie and every injury he caused." Her eyes searched his, wide with fear and fragile hope. "Will I be safe?" "You will be protected," Adrian said. "I will not allow anyone to harm you again." The words were simple, but they settled over her like a promise far stronger than anything she had ever been given. For the first time, Lina did not just feel rescued, she felt defended. And Adrian knew this was the turning point, not only in the investigation, but in the bond forming quietly, inevitably, between them. The next morning arrived with a heaviness that settled over the entire estate. The staff whispered about the files Adrian had uncovered, unsure whether to feel relieved or frightened. But for Adrian, there was no room for hesitation. It was time to bring everything into the open. By late afternoon, he had assembled the entire household staff in the main hall. Lina remained in the medical room, still too shaken to stand before the others, but he had promised to speak on her behalf. She trusted him now, and the weight of that trust rested firmly on his shoulders. When Adrian stepped into the hall, the room fell silent. He rarely addressed the staff directly, and certainly never with such gravity. His gaze moved across the room, pausing briefly on the doorway where security stood guard. "The reason I called you here," he began, "is to correct a grave injustice that has taken place within this house." Nervous glances spread across the faces of the staff. He lifted the folder of documents. These records were hidden. They contain altered reports, falsified disciplinary notes, and unauthorized punishments. One of you abused this system to inflict harm, especially on one staff member who could not defend herself. A chill moved through the hall. Adrian continued. The former manager specifically targeted Lina. He assigned her impossible workloads, deprived her of safety measures, and threatened her position if she dared to speak. A murmur rose from the staff, disbelief, regret, and shock blending together. Adrian's voice deepened. "Let me be clear. Mistreatment of any person under my roof will never be tolerated. Not now, not ever." At that moment, security escorted the former manager into the hall. His wrists were not bound, but his posture showed the arrogance had drained from him completely. He looked around the room with bitterness. "This is a misunderstanding," he insisted loudly. "She is weak. She lied to you. She—" "Enough," Adrian said sternly. His voice echoed with authority. "You endangered her life. You endangered the entire staff. And you did it because you believed no one would question you." A wave of emotion passed through the room. The manager stepped forward, anger rising. "All this for a maid who can barely speak? You are letting her manipulate you." But the moment those words left his mouth, Adrian's expression hardened in a way no one had seen before. "She did not manipulate anyone," Adrian said. "She endured what no one should have endured. She remained kind when you showed cruelty. She remained honest when you hid the truth. She is more deserving of respect than anyone who stands here and calls himself superior." The hall fell into a stunned silence. Security moved in. The manager was formally removed from the estate and placed under investigation. As he disappeared from sight, a sense of long-awaited justice settled across the room. When the staff dispersed, Adrian returned to the medical room. Lina sat quietly, her hands resting on her lap. She looked up when he entered, searching his face for an answer. "It is done," he said gently. Her breath trembled. "People will know what he did?" "Yes," Adrian said, and they will know you were brave enough to survive it." A tear slipped down her cheek, but this time it carried relief rather than fear. She whispered, "Thank you for believing me." Adrian moved closer, his voice soft. "I do more than believe you, Lina. I respect you." Her eyes lifted, startled by the depth in his tone. In that small, quiet room, the distance between billionaire and Maid began to fade, not because of status or obligation, but because Adrian had chosen to stand with her, not above her. And Lina, for the first time, allowed herself to feel what safety truly meant. The days following the confrontation moved with a gentleness the mansion had never known. The staff walked lighter. The tension that had once clung to the walls slowly dissolved. And for Lina, each sunrise felt like a small promise that life could finally begin to heal. Her strength returned steadily. By the end of the week, she was well enough to leave the medical room. Adrian personally escorted her down the hallway, walking at her pace, as if he wanted to protect every step she took. "You look stronger today," he said as they reached the small garden behind the house. "I feel stronger," she replied softly. For the first time in a long time, they sat on a wooden bench beneath a canopy of leaves. The late afternoon light filtered through, painting warm patterns across the path. It was the kind of peaceful moment that did not need grand words, only honest ones. "Lina," Adrian said, turning toward her, "I have made arrangements for your role in this house. You will no longer be a maid. You will act as my direct assistant in household operations. You will have better pay, better hours, and authority over your own team if you choose to build one." Her lips parted in shock. "Sir, I do not know if I deserve all of this." "You do," Adrian said. "You deserve every opportunity that was once denied to you." She lowered her gaze, overwhelmed, but a small smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "I never imagined my life changing this way." "It changed," Adrian said quietly, "because you survived something you should never have faced. You showed strength even when no one saw it. Now it is my responsibility to make sure your future reflects that strength." Silence settled over them, soft and warm. For a moment the world felt suspended, as if waiting for the next breath to decide its direction. Lina looked up at him, her voice delicate. "Why are you doing all of this for me?" Adrian hesitated, the answer resting in his chest long before it reached his lips. "Because the night I carried you out of that room, something inside me shifted. I saw a person who had been hurt, overlooked, and silenced, and I knew I could not let her fade into the background again." Her eyes glistened, not with fear this time, but with a tenderness she could no longer hide. "Sir." "Lina," he said gently, "you do not need to call me sir." She drew a quiet breath. "Then what should I call you?" He smiled faintly. "Adrian." The name felt warm on her tongue. "Adrian, thank you for seeing me." He reached into his coat and pulled out the small cloth she had held the night she collapsed. It had been washed and neatly folded, but the embroidered initials remained just as she had remembered. "I believe this belongs to you," he said. Her breath caught as she took it from his hand. "You kept it." "It reminded me of what matters," Adrian said. "Of the person who reminded me." A soft wind swept through the garden, stirring the leaves and lifting the tension from the air. Adrian reached out, gently covering her hand with his. "Lina," he said, "I want you to feel safe here, not because you work here, but because your presence matters to me, more than I expected, more than I can deny." Her heart fluttered, quiet but unmistakable. "I feel safe," she whispered, "especially when you are near." The moment stretched, tender and unspoken, until their hands intertwined naturally, without hesitation or fear. Adrian held her gaze, sincerity shining through every word. "Whatever comes next, you will not face it alone." Lina nodded, her smile soft and full of new beginnings. "Neither will you." As the sun dipped lower, casting golden light across the garden, two people who once lived in different worlds sat side by side, no longer divided by status or silence. In the end, it was not wealth that changed everything. It was compassion. It was truth. It was the courage to finally be seen. And for Adrian and Lina, this was not the end. It was the beginning of something real.